Darryl, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We're talking about budgeting, but let's start with a problem that seems to have grown particularly in South Auckland, but I would guess elsewhere over recent months. And that's this idea of door-to-door selling. What's going on?
The reality is I've worked in Mangere for about 9.5 years now. When I went to work in Mangere, I would estimate that there were about 2 or 3 mobile shop companies, the door-to-door salespeople. For 15 years I've lived in Greylin. Recently in March I moved out to Mangere Bridge, and all of a sudden every night of the week I've got knocks on my door. It's door-to-door salespeople trying to sell you vacuum cleaners that are around $4,500. People selling you educational computers and discs, and they're around $7,000 or $8,000. Now the price comparison at Kmart or the warehouse stationery is around $800. So the markup is staggering.
Wow.
And of course we're now getting the mobile trucks. Traditionally the mobile truck industry has gone door to door and they've sold bedding and clothing for kids. Whereas over the last couple of years they've now bought into the idea of selling food on credit. So 2 litres of milk may be costing you around $8 or $9. A packet of nappies, which at Pack and Save would possibly cost you $6 or $7, you're spending $30 on a mobile truck. They're selling flat screen TVs, they're selling mobile phones. And what they're doing is they're going to traditionally lower income areas such as Mangere. They're targeting the vulnerable, they're targeting the poor, and they're now knocking the doors. They're going in packs. They're not even knocking the door one-on-one. You actually have a salesman putting their foot in the door to stop you closing the door.
Wow.
So the hard sell is being put on people. In particular, they're targeting pensioners. And very often our pensioners are home alone. Often, they may be a widow or widower, so the spouse has passed away. So they're vulnerable anyway, and they're a bit lonely. So these are the people that are inviting in door-to-door salesmen. And I'm not suggesting that those people are, going to do anything wrong to them. But you are putting yourself in a vulnerable position if you're opening your home up to a complete stranger, because they're checking out what you've got.
Now, my mum was 85 and she lives in the UK, but we found that she was getting insurance, things that she didn't need. She
Absolutely.
was getting, she was targeted by people selling hearing aids. Are the elderly particularly targeted?
I think the elderly are targeted, and my mum is exactly the same. My mum sadly passed away 2 years ago at age 74. But in the 12-month prior, my father had died, so she had 12 months where she was at home for a large part of the day on her own. Even though family visited, there's large chunks of the day where you are there on their own. So I would ring up and say, what are you doing? And she maybe have the Jehovah's Witnesses in because they'd have a cup of tea and a bit of a gossip. Next, she's saying to me, I've signed up for a credit card. I'm saying, Mum, you're 74. You've never had a credit card. Why do you need a credit card? Oh, the lady that came to sell it told me that you get a free gift. So there are lots of enticements. For example, there's a new Christmas club opened up in South Auckland, and I won't mention the name, but the reality is they're selling meat packs where families save up money to buy the meat pack. It's costing around $2,332. Price comparison at the Mad Butcher is $519. But how they're getting you to buy into it is, 1, they're coming to your home. 2, they're giving you $100 worth of free KFC vouchers or $100 worth of free alcohol. And, where you're somebody at home on your own, or where maybe money is tight and you're on a benefit, unfortunately, you may get sucked into that type of deal. And it's not a deal that benefits anybody other than the person who's collecting your money.
So what can people do? Because it's very hard to turn... these guys are professionals, aren't they? They are expert at selling you something you don't necessarily want.
Well, I believe there's a couple of things that we need to do. Number one, there needs to be a lot more public awareness, and that's what I'm doing. I've been on radio in the last couple of weeks, in the newspapers, and now on a show like yours, which is fantastic, so thank you for the opportunity. But I also believe that the government have an obligation to strengthen protocols around door-to-door salespeople that, I'd like to see a blanket ban, to be perfectly honest. I don't think that will happen, but I think that there needs to be regulation in place. We need to have security checks on every person knocking your door to ensure that you're a fit and responsible person, because you are opening up your home. And even recently, a vacuum company knocked on my door and said, well, we'd like to do a demonstration. And I said, well, I don't have carpets, it's all wooden polished floors. And the salesman said, well, actually, you've got rugs in your bedroom. They had been to the back of my property without my permission and literally scoured the house, looking through the windows, They could tell me where I had rugs. They also told me where my lounge suite was so that they could do a demonstration on the sofa. So public awareness for me is really the first starting off point. But I very much would like the Commerce Commission to come on board. They have done a lot of work. Last year we lodged a complaint with the Commerce Commission about some of the practices of the mobile truck industry. And I'm very grateful that 7 companies received quite stern warnings. But for me, in the last 12 months, nothing really has changed. So now I'm asking that the Commerce Commission reinvestigate, and I'd like the government, the new national government, to come on board and look at what they can do to actually strengthen it so that people are safe within their own homes, and that there is no unrealistic pressure put on people. And why I say that is traditionally salespeople have gone door to door on their own. Now you see that the van will pull up on the street and half a dozen people will get out of the car. So each person that opens the door will possibly be confronted by 3 to 4 people. That's a lot of pressure, especially if you're a pensioner.
Let's broaden it briefly to talk about budgeting as a whole,
Yes.
because I know that that's where you come from. Of course, this blows budgeting, doesn't it? Because even if someone has been quite careful about saying this much for food, this much for clothes, whatever, someone comes in and says, look, you can have this, that it just blows the whole thing, doesn't it?
In budgeting, the whole idea, number one, is we want people to put their hand up and say, I need some help. I have to say that for the most part, all budget services throughout the country provide a free service. They're confidential, they work empathetically, and they work with the client in control. So the client makes the decision on their budget. And we're saying there is no cultural embarrassment. The Maori word is whakama. There is no shame. Future generations will thank you for asking for the help now, because we can make a huge difference in the way that a family live. The difficulty is that, we live in a consumer society. Everything on the television is telling you bigger is better. Interest-free TVs, interest-free washing machines. Some deals are sold as so attractive, but the long-term impact on a family is huge. Even within our service, we're trying to do things very differently. We're looking at things more holistically. We're trying to provide services that are wraparound all under one roof. We now have a full-time family counsellor on board, and the counsellor will go in and work one-on-one with families. They work doing couple counselling, and they also talk to the whole family. I'm a big believer where you include the children, and of course children need to be of an appropriate age, sort of 7, 8, where they understand the concept of money. But if you sit a child down and explain, well, we can't go to McDonald's tonight, or we can't go to KFC because there really is no money. It's about educating our mokapuna and our babies that there is a different life ahead for them. Because, again, these are all my opinions. Living in debt, for me, is a learned behaviour. And I'm very, very pleased to see that the Labour government introduced financial literacy, is what it's been termed as. But essentially, budgeting is now going to be taught in schools across the country. We've recently launched that in the last couple of months at Mangere Central School. And what was really lovely about that class is it wasn't only for the children. We brought in their parents. There are ways to encourage kids really good habits about money from a very young age, which is why I'm particularly pleased that schools are now reintroducing piggy banks and savings. So my little boy every Friday takes a few dollars to school and it gets saved. That's all about, you're proud because you're seeing your money mount up. My little boy constantly tells me how much money he's got in the bank. And even though it's only a few $100s, it's certainly a few $100 more than I had when I was 7.
That's great. Well, Darryl, thank you very much indeed for your time. There's loads more to talk about. We'll have to get back another time.
Absolutely. I'd be very happy to come back.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Take care.